The other thing is, you do this in Singapore, we're not very good at protesting. But you do this in Hong Kong, they know a thing or two about protesting.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the award-winning Yahoo Footballing Weekly with me, award-winning Yahoo columnist Neil Humphreys.
And me, award-winning Yahoo editor Chia and Keong. And this is an award-winning guest from Deloitte.
Everybody
James
gets
Walton.
a medal today.
Everybody, yeah.
Sports Business Group Leader for Deloitte, James Walton.
Yeah.
How are you, James?
It's good to be back, right? It must be the end of the transfer window if I'm here.
No, I want to thank you first. Let's get it on record because you contributed, my friend, to being this silver medal award-winning podcast.
I'm not used to winning trophies
Yeah,
as a Spurs fan.
Are you going to tell them?
All of a surprise, we what was it, last Thursday or something?
I don't know. I know you woke me up to tell
February
me.
the first. I think February the second morning, I got an email and then I check it and then they said, we've announced the winners of the Sports Podcast Awards. And I scroll down to our Diverse Voices Awards category. We got silver coming second.
Unbelievable.
To
the giant CBS, the American network, and their podcast about women's soccer, which of course is a huge sport in the US. Yeah. No shame in coming second to them.
No shame at all, yeah.
But not naming names.
And
but
the only Asian winner.
Yeah,
only
Asian winner
this year.
And we're not going to name names, except Ian Wright. Yeah. We beat Ian Wright.
Jermaine Defoe.
We beat Jermaine Defoe. Troy Deeney as well.
Yeah.
Well, Troy Deeney.
And there was a few big boys in there from the BBC and Sky and
IHC TV or something.
Yeah. But we're not naming names. So thank you. Most importantly of all, thank you.
Thank you for your continuous support.
Yes.
Thanks to our guests who came in with their diverse opinions.
Yeah, and dare I say, I'm rather proud of it because when we set out from the beginning, we wanted diverse opinions.
Absolutely.
We didn't just want us rambling on every week.
Yeah.
So we do have different guests every week talking about both local football, Asian football, women's football, and so on. So again, thank you very much. Do keep those comments coming because they make the difference.
Hopefully we can get a plug or something delivered to us and maybe we can display it next time we come.
Otherwise, we're going to shamelessly make one.
Probably.
We'll get Jay, the director, to produce something and we'll just plonk it on the table. Yeah. But again, thank you. Keep the comments coming. Now, English Premier League. Manchester City, let's start with them. They're back. They won. Are they top of the table now?
No, not yet.
No, okay.
They will game in hand.
They will be soon. They will be soon.
2 points behind. 2 points behind with a game in hand.
Yeah.
So they just beat Brentford 3-1. All 3 goals scored by Phil Foden.
Yep.
First 2 goals was like empty in the box. So, but the third one he drove through the crowd and scored a pretty good goal. And there's talk of him that say, I want this central role that Kevin De Bruyne plays. And I think he's thriving in it. He last time, many times he was like kept out on the left or the right. But when he plays center, it seems like he's delivering.
Yeah. But did you see after Pep Guardiola, he went a bit Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan. He was like, earn it. Earn it. If you want this position, earn it. It's up to you. He said, only Phil Foden can decide how far he wants to go, how good he wants to be. I love Phil Foden. I think he's a special player, particularly for an England player. Love to know what James thinks. This has to be his year. 2024 has to be Phil Foden's year, both for club and country. Yes, he won the treble last season, but towards the end, he was actually a bit of a peripheral figure. Yeah. I mean, I think he was benched for the Champions League final. He came on for, I think, De Bruyne. He was fabulous against Brentford. His movement, his interplay, his speed of thought. He just thinks and moves faster than the other players around him. You saw that with all of his goals. That's Phil Foden at his best. He's such a elegant, beautiful, quick player, a real asset to England and Man City. This has to be his year. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I mean, with Phil Foden, we often talk about him. He's quite different to a lot of other English players. Yeah. You could argue there's a few players that have that maverick quality at the moment who are in and around the England setup. Your Grealish, your Maddison, people like that. And like you say, he tends to get played off the sides. It tends to be that you've got Rashford over on the left and him on the right, or Saka on the right and him on the left. And we've never really used him for England in that number 10 role because England don't really play that number 10 role. They tend to play a double pivot and then, God help us, Jordan Henderson sitting in as a number 8.
He's still there, Gareth Southgate. He's still there.
Behind the 3. But if you look at like the way that City have been playing recently and you look at even the way Spurs are playing, where you have the one in behind the three.
Right.
He would be the perfect one for England to be that one. And then you can have Saka on the right, would be a no-brainer, Kane up front. And then you can decide whether it's Grealish or Rashford or whoever it is down the left. My worry with him has always been, and similarly with Jack Grealish, is you think back to Joe Cole.
I was just going to say, he's like a Joe Cole figure.
He's that mercurial, maverick player, but does he quite deliver? Joe Cole, I mean, you look, he scored one of the greatest England goals at a World Cup ever, but did he really do it for England?
No, yeah.
Did he really, in spite of being in trophy-winning teams at Chelsea, and he was in trophy-winning teams at Liverpool, I believe, did he ever really live to his potential?
No.
The worry with Foden is, I would say, if this is his peak, I would say he wouldn't have lived up to that potential. He's got to get more influential. He's got to get to a point where Chelsea turn around in 2 years. Man City turn around in 2 years' time and say we don't need Kevin De Bruyne anymore because we've got Phil Foden. And are they at that point yet?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Phil Foden is actually when you said the words double pivot, I just felt the hairs on my neck stand up.
Not Jordan Henderson?
It's part of it, isn't it? It's double pivot, it's Jordan Henderson, it's Gareth Southgate.
Calvin Phillips, who never plays. And still gets on the
I
team.
would turn it around. I will be this blunt. If Pep Guardiola was managing England, they'd have won the World Cup already and the Euros
with the
without
squad
a
they've got.
shadow of a doubt.
Right.
So if you are listening, he's not, but if you are listening, Gareth Southgate, just look and see what Pep Guardiola does with Phil Foden. And if you can't find a space for that talent,
then why are you the England coach?
I don't know what else to say. All right, talking of talent, didn't show much of it from Liverpool's point of view, did they? Everyone was predicting a draw or maybe a Liverpool victory. Arsenal walked it 3-1.
When you have Alisson Becker and Virgil van Dijk, two of the most reliable Liverpool players, combining to concede the second goal against Arsenal, I think we deserve to lose. And I fully think we deserve to lose. Arsenal, to be frank, first half they walked us. They really played beyond. They pressed harder than us, and that's saying something. So and then Martinelli and Saka were bombarding down the flanks. In particular, but Martinelli, which I always think that Martinelli is underrated.
He's inconsistent though.
Inconsistent.
But when he's on song, is nearly unplayable as we found out. And so we lost 3-1. Liverpool lost 3-1, and now I mean, while they're still at top of the table, is two Man City and even Arsenal are breathing down the next. So.
To me, honestly, this great run of form Liverpool have been on results-wise, I've been watching it, and you've been watching the games and saying it feels like they're riding a wave a little bit, and that at any moment in time, it doesn't feel like with Man City, you feel like it's a machine, and the results will happen, right? With similar to Arsenal, with Liverpool, you feel like they bottle lightning, but next week if that doesn't happen, I think with Salah out, they were papering over the cracks a little bit, and then with Nunes out. It became
everything caught up with them,
and the fact they haven't had a lot of rotation and things like that. It caught up, but like you say, Arsenal were up for it, and you see Arteta geeing up the crowd early on. Like you say, the press from the start was there, and it was almost like Liverpool just were not expecting that they just kind of sleepwalked, whatever the past tense, sleepwalked, whatever the past tense is, into this game and just got caught cold, and then from that moment on they were spinning, but it's kept the title race alive. But it's not the end for Liverpool by a long stretch.
But you said it right there, James. Arteta was up for it. He got the boys up for it. We've made fun of Arteta in the past. Yes, we've made fun of him. We've all seen the Amazon documentaries and his speakers and everything. But he played this one beautifully, right? G'd up the crowd, G'd up the players. You know where I'm going with this.
Next Liverpool manager.
No, that's never going to happen. Some people need to get a grip of their criticisms. Arteta's run down the touchline was brilliant. It's what we supposedly watch football for, a moment of pure visceral joy, right? That's what we tune in for every week, right? The man does it, and then the etiquette police come out, Carragher, Neville, Keane, half of Liverpool, others. Basically, all these old middle-aged men whining about, it's unbecoming of a football manager. He's celebrating a goal. He's pulled off a tactical masterstroke. If you can't let him have the joy, if you can't let him savor that moment, I genuinely don't know why you're watching. There is plenty things in this world to get angry about right now. As I said in my column, just watch any news channel right now. There's plenty of real issues to get angry about. If a man celebrating a tactical masterstroke when that third goal went in really triggers you that much, I think you've got to do something else. I think you've got to turn the TV off, go for a walk, take a breath of fresh air.
It's the nature of football reporting and social media.
Of course,
honestly, these days is if it's not your team, it's wrong. Yeah. And you know, there was a lot of vitriol about Arsenal celebrating. They celebrated this game like they've won the title already. We'll play this at the end of the season when they don't win anything, right? But there's an element is. Your fans are there. You're in your home stadium. You've just won a game against a big rival.
Frankly,
if you just kind of went like that and walked off, the fans would be like, well, you know, they want that celebration and recognizing the fans. Now, if there's been cases in the past of teams that have, you know, gone back into the dressing room and cracked open champagne a bit too early and all that, that's one thing. But on the pitch, celebrating the fact you've won that game, to me, there's nothing wrong with it, right? And it can build momentum for the team.
And I have no problems with it. And I see the Liverpool fans having problem with it. And I think, have you seen Jurgen Klopp celebrating?
Yeah. West Brom, fourth place all those years ago.
And then against the last minute goal against Everton, and he was running to Alisson and fist bumping,
and we love
chest bumping, but we love it. And then now you're saying things about
and also,
a bit hypocritical,
as we said, Klopp does his famous, three pump thing that he does to the fans. Often when defeated players are still on the pitch around him, no one has an issue with that. Yeah. No one had an issue with Jose Mourinho doing it back in 2004 with Porto against Manchester United. At the time, we loved him for it. It was endearing.
But I do think sometimes it's also... a lot of the time when you get these character assassination type things, it's because of other circumstances around the person. And Arteta, unfortunately, in recent months has come across a little bit unlikable. Yeah. He's one of those people that, and you know, there was a lot of conversation about Klopp when he stood down. That in the early days, Klopp was a breath of fresh air. We like his humour, but then the last couple of years, he became cynical and nasty and grouchy, and we don't like that anymore. Pep, to his credit, has generally managed to kind of stay above that. But Arteta, you know, he's always whining, complaining. When Arsenal lose, they file a complaint. They write letters to here, there, and everywhere, which isn't always him. No. It's sometimes the club. But then that character, then the action becomes a gesture of that character. When Jose Mourinho with Porto ran down the touchline at Man United, it was a beautiful story because it's Porto and who's this guy? And it's Man United, right? Mm-hmm. You fast forward a couple of years later and the same guy does that at Man United or at Chelsea and it becomes, this bore, he's so rude, he's so arrogant, why is he doing this in another team's stadium? Sometimes the agenda around things colours the actions.
Speaking of agenda, you're a Tottenham fan, right?
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there.
And it's not because I want Arteta to stay.
No, exactly. It's got nothing to do with his Arteta criticism at all. All right, let's do a quick word on Chelsea because I really want to get to the transfer window. Pochettino lost again. It's one thing to lose to a so-called rival.
You're doing a great job.
But Wolves. I mean, I'll say first things first. I'll go first. Poch. Yes, I think Pochettino's days are numbered, and they should be numbered categorically. Yes. You can't keep hiding behind Todd Bowley and the crazy
young players and
young players and all this stuff. Bottom line, Gary O'Neill did a fantastic job against him. Tactically, Gary O'Neill is looking like one of the top young managers in the game. He's doing a fabulous job at Wolves. Kuna and Neto ran rings around the Chelsea defence. What was more worrying, he didn't tinker. He didn't change. He didn't do anything. He didn't try to influence the match from a touchline. Some of the managers we've mentioned, Mourinho's a good example of that in his prime, was a master of changing a game in real time from the touchline. Poch did nothing. There were players arguing amongst themselves. They didn't seem to know where to play, where to run, or even to run at all. That's on the manager. That's on the training ground. Yeah. I think Poch's days are numbered.
But I also argue that his days are numbered since he took on the job. It's like a poison chalice. He wasn't given much chance to succeed. I think with such a dysfunctional squad, unbalanced, full of $100 million buys which don't fit in to a lot of his system.
True, but you could say Chelsea have been a dysfunctional club for 15
exactly.
years. You get a season or two. You get 2 seasons at Chelsea, even at the heyday of Roman Abramovich. If you're not winning the Champions League and winning the league, you're fired.
You win the Champions League, get fired as well. In some cases.
So they've always been a bit of a basket case from a coaching point of view.
But a couple of things on Pop, right? So number one, when he was at Spurs, I can tell you one of the problems Spurs fans had with him, and we loved him, but one of the problems that would keep coming up was we always used to say he would never do a substitution until the 70th minute.
Yep.
And it was like clockwork. And Spurs fans would always be sat there in 55th, 60th minute saying, do something, change something. And then clockwork, 2 subs at the 70th minute mark. And that was always something that was leveled at him. So I'd say that number one. Number two, Chelsea bought him in not because of that Paris Saint-Germain in Neymar and all that, right? They brought him in because Todd Boehly's idea was that this was a project and that he was going to hoover up all this young talent. And he basically, my guess would be, he said to Poch, do what you did at Spurs. Take all that young talent, get them running hard, increase their values, and off we go from there. But he doesn't seem to know what his best 11 is right now. His hilarious comment in the press conference the other day where he said, actually, after they've spent whatever the hell they've spent, right? And he turned around and said, you know what we really need is a set-piece specialist. If we had James Ward-Prowse, we'd be... And it's like, well, number one, you could have bought James Ward-Prowse. You didn't. You went and bought Lavia and Fernandez and Caicedo and all these people for a lot more money. But number two, that is not solving any problem for this Chelsea team. And I mean, you've already got Ben Chilwell and people like that.
It's not solving West Ham's problems at the moment.
Yeah. So I mean, it's comedy to come out with that. But somebody said to me, well, if he wins the League Cup, and if he gets them into Europe through that route, and I said, I'm sorry, but if Todd Boehly did everything that he did to win a League Cup, even if you win it, right, and struggle into 7th or 8th, it would be one thing if you were playing good football. The best thing he's got going for him right now is that his next 5 games, 4 are away.
Yeah.
And he's got a cup final.
Because the Chelsea fans turned.
And their home form is atrocious. Their away form's actually okay. But those 5 games, I think you've got Palace away, you've got City away, you've got Arsenal away, Newcastle at home.
Wow.
I think the other one might be Brentford or something. So it's not an easy run of games. And I tell you, Palace away, Palace are not in great form. So if they lose that Palace away this weekend, I'm not sure how much longer he may get Jose Mourinho out before the cup final.
Yeah. But could you imagine, though, if they do win the League Cup, as you correctly said, that'd be the most expensive League Cup win in history, right? A League Cup that costs £1 billion.
And it would be so Chelsea, because you look back to, Roberto Di Matteo, they were shocking. They were awful. They put him in temporary charge. He wins the Champions League. Right. It happened with Lampard. A similar guy. You kind of sit there and go like... they seem to fall backwards into these managerial decisions.
Well, speaking of falling backwards, the transfer window did just that. Yeah. It had the lowest spend, not including COVID, since 2011-2012. Couple of stats here. £715 million less was spent in this January transfer window. Only 100 million overall.
Lower than
over 100 million overall. The previous season was around 815 million pounds. Some would argue you could see it coming. Financial fair play, what's happening to Everton and Sheffield United.
Some say it's because last season Chelsea spent
They were a big chunk of it. They spent 100 million just on Fernandez.
And Mudryk as well.
All of these figures come from the financial services firm. Let me see the name. Deloitte. Now, only an award-winning podcast would bring in someone from the actual company who compiles these figures post-transfer window. See, that's the difference. That's the difference. Over to you, James. Give us your overview of the transfer window.
It's a bit scary when the biggest signing is a 25 million euro centre. You know who the biggest spenders were in the transfer window, by the way? No. In all of Europe, who were the biggest spenders in the transfer window?
Wrexham.
You should know this.
Not Wrexham.
West Ham.
No.
And it wasn't West Ham.
No.
Because they sold a few. Why should I know
Who
this?
spent the most money?
It's in Europe.
Yeah.
It's not in English Premier League.
Not in the English Premier League, no.
Championship.
No.
Then I completely have no idea.
It would be a French team that did a bit of business with you and then trashed you for it afterwards.
PSG.
No.
Marseille.
I forgot now.
Leon.
Leon. Was that
Leon,
Ben
who
Rama?
went and got Benrahma,
Yeah.
Matic, Mangala, and Gift Orban. And they spent 50 million euros, which made them the biggest spenders in all of Europe. And by the way, they were under financial fair play rules in France. And then basically the French authorities relaxed their budget. in January, and suddenly they went out and spent a bunch of money. But when 50 million euros in France,
Gets you the top place.
when was the last time besides PSG that a French team was remotely up there?
I blocked out the Ben Rama thing because only West Ham can finish a transfer window worse than when they started it. Classic West Ham boys.
Yeah,
well
come
done.
on, Irons.
All right, give us the overview.
So look, a couple of things have happened all as a perfect storm, right? If you look back, even last summer, there was already whisperings that there was trouble coming down the line because the rules were now going to be implemented. You had these issues in the UK of a financial watchdog, a regulator being put in on the Premier League. The Premier League was trying to show that they could regulate themselves. So a lot of things kind of happening. But suddenly out of nowhere, you had Chelsea doing stupid things. And then when Chelsea's stupid things started to come to an end, the Saudis came in and did stupid things, which helped Chelsea, ironically, do more stupid things, right? So you had that external injection into the Premier League. The Premier League effectively is the engine, but somebody has to put some gas into that engine. And sometimes it was a Chelsea, and this time it was a Saudi. Because in Europe, with the exception of PSG, nobody is going to put gas into the engine because they can't afford the players from the Premier League. They can't afford the wages. They're not going to buy anything. And so usually you need that domino. You need that one team that, Chelsea goes and buys from Brighton. So Brighton go and buy from West Ham. So West Ham go, and suddenly you all go round in a merry-go-round. And it just didn't happen. There was no moment. So then the question comes to, a couple of things. Why were the Saudis not spending? That's an interesting one because they literally gave an interview. I think Chief Commercial Officer of their league gave an interview in July, August saying, this is not the end. This is just the beginning.
That's right.
Did they stop spending because the bad publicity and the fact it's not working? Did they stop spending because actually this was all they ever kind of planned to do? Because if you think about it, if you want your own players to develop in a league, then ideally you want 4 or 5 foreigners in a team, not an entire team of foreigners. Was it because they weren't getting good value? Was it because they're focused on golf? A lot of things there could be, right? From a Premier League point of view, Chelsea there is a train coming down the tracks towards Chelsea. And I alluded to this with you earlier on today. If you look at their numbers, basically the last 3 years, they are bang on that 105 million of losses that you're allowed. And the reason is because of how they've sold so much academy talent and because they pulled those tricks with the long-term contracts, the amortization. So for everyone's benefit, a couple of things on what was FP, now is PSR, right? Number one, if I buy Neil for £50 million bargain on a 5-year contract, then next year he's deemed to be worth £40 million, and the following year 30 million, and you straight line depreciate over the contract, right? If I then sell him, then I don't record 40 million, I record the difference between the fee and the amortized price, right? But if Neil is an academy player and I raised him up, and there is no amortization because I never paid a fee. So I sell him for 50 million, I book 50 million. And that's why selling academy players is a very good model for them, right? And that's why the rumors around Conor Gallagher were going in. The second trick they played was this amortization of contracts. They put people on 8, 9, 10-year contracts. They currently have 12 players on their books who have contracts longer than 8 years at this point in time. Now, that loophole has been closed, right? Yeah. So now you have to amortize over 5 years. But again, why were they doing that? They were trying to spread the cost. And how it hits, but you can't do that anymore. Now the problem that's coming down the line for them is that they've firstly sold most of their academy people. There's no way they can keep Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah and possibly even Reece James in the summer and stay afloat. But we're hearing that their loss for this 3-year period ending this current financial year is likely to be around 200 to 220 million pounds, unless they do something drastic, which may involve stealing Tottenham's chief commercial officer, as we heard in the last 24 hours. They've made an operating loss for the last 10 years as a club. Leave aside football transfers, that's an operating loss. That's commercials, everything. The other issue they have coming down the line is they currently have £1.9 billion of fees for players and other costs that they are committed to over the next 10 years that is already there. Now, if your model is you make a loss every year and you've got you're already running a 200 million loss and you've got effectively 200 of committed spend per year over the next 10 years, that is just not sustainable. So Chelsea are now up against it. You've got Arsenal, Liverpool, so Arsenal, who are very much up against it. You've got United who are up against it. But what's interesting with Arsenal and United is the rules say that you can have around about 30 million of losses, and then your owner can inject around about 30 million a year of equity, which increases those losses to 105. Only 3 clubs have maxed that out in the Premier League recently, which is Chelsea, Everton, and Leicester. Liverpool, the owners have put in 0. Arsenal, the owners have put in 0. United, the owners have put in 0. So when you hear that they have financial fair play issues, they have financial fair play issues because their limit is 35 million because the owners are not putting any money in the club. If the owners would have put in the 90 million that they could actually put in, sorry, 15 million you're allowed, 30 million per year on top. If the owners would have put in that 90 million they could, you would have 90 million that you could spend, and they're not doing it. So there's a lot of funny things going on in football right now, but with the sudden penalties being levied, on top of that, there was some COVID release for losses, which is a couple of years ago now. We deal in 3-year cycles. Right. So those COVID reliefs are wearing off. And that massive summer spend we had and the massive winter spend we have is now in a 3-year cycle. And this is why Everton have a problem. It's a 3-year cycle. So you get whacked once. Very good chance you're going to get whacked the next year and then whacked the next year. And that could all happen because of 1 year of excessive spending could trigger 3 years of penalties.
All right, so crystal ball time, briefly. Seeing what's already happened to Everton, what potential punishments if Everton got their 10 points for their indiscretion and you're looking at Chelsea, what kind of punishment could they be looking at and when could it conceivably happen?
So realistically, they've set the bar here at a 10-point penalty. And we got to be clear, a lot of people talk about Man City and Everton. The Man City situation is very different. The Man City situation is accusations of falsifying sponsorship deals, not cooperating with the investigation. The Everton situation is you just didn't meet the rules. And Everton's defense is that, well, we think we did, but you didn't treat our stadium costs the right way and things like that. The response from the Premier League is that you still went on spending even though you knew you were heading this way, right?
So Chelsea?
So Chelsea realistically would be in the same kind of boat as Everton. Yeah. You'd be looking at a 10-point penalty. And if it is deemed that they hit this in this season, 2023-2024, then likely that the penalty would be announced or that the fact that they are being charged would be announced around about January of next year, which would mean the points penalty would kick in 2024-2025. So they would not get punished this season because they're not publishing accounts yet. Man United, by the way, their first 3 quarters accounts are awful, so they may be in a bit of trouble soon as well. But realistically, you'd be looking at 2024-2025. And if Everton don't win this appeal, and they get a second 10-point penalty, and if Forest don't win their appeal and probably get a 10-point penalty, very likely that next year you may find those 2, if they don't get relegated, are back in the dock again as well.
So to wrap it up, all the top clubs are going to get relegated and points deductions, and West Ham are going to win the league.
You just called Everton a top club, but that's
West Ham are going to win the league.
I'll accept Nottingham Forest.
I didn't hear Liverpool in his time.
So the 2 teams that have the most clearance space to PSR right now is number 1 is Tottenham and number 2 is Liverpool. Both have over 200 million of space before they hit the FFP.
Stingy bastards.
Now, so somebody asked me the other day on another podcast, well, Daniel Levy, it turns out he's been a genius all along. And,
he's just tired.
And isn't this great? And I said, well, on the one hand, as a Spurs fan, the first thing you think is, this is great. We're the only ones. We've got 200 million to spend. And then you remember that the same man that did that is the same man you are now relying on to spend the money.
Not going to happen.
And he ain't going to spend a penny.
All right, we've got to wrap this podcast up. But before we go, let's talk about someone who did spend a lot of money and feel like they didn't get any value for their money. Mr. Lionel Messi went to Hong Kong to play in an exhibition for his team, Inter Miami, and did not get on the pitch, and it did not go down well.
Even my mum, who doesn't watch football that much, she saw the story this morning and she said, how can Messi don't come up to the pitch at least to speak to the fans or to wave at the fans? And maybe there will be somewhat a peace, but if he doesn't even show up on any way, the fans paid They paid 4,500 Hong Kong dollars.
Yep.
Some of them, which is about $750 for tickets, for the tickets. No?
Well, I'll be brief on this because I want to get your take on the corporate side. Very simple. In the past, I have been quite critical of fans' entitlement sometimes when Liverpool and Tottenham and Man U come to town.
Right.
Just because they're here and you've bought the ticket, you don't necessarily own them.
Correct.
This is completely different.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Because when Liverpool, Manchester United, or even Tottenham come to this part of the world, they are the brand. The club is the brand, the legacy, the heritage, right?
Yes.
In this case, Inter Miami has none of these things. None of them. The only reason they are in Hong Kong is because of Lionel Messi. He is the brand and the brand alone. He's the reason you got sponsors. He's the reason you sold out. He has to play. He has to put in an appearance. If he doesn't, fans, sponsors, corporates, whoever has got every right to demand their money back.
Which is what they've been doing.
What do you think from the corporate point?
Yes and no.
All right, go for it.
So I'd say a couple of things, right? So number one, I 100% agree with your point that when Spurs come here, when Liverpool come here, if Spurs come and Harry Kane doesn't play, Liverpool comes, Salah doesn't play.
It doesn't
you
matter.
look around the pitch and you still go, this is my team, here we go. I'm very excited.
Right.
One of the problems with this is that Inter Miami, with all due respect, I'm not there to watch DeAndre Yedlin.
No,
I could have seen him at Spurs. I'm not there to watch Noah Allen. Once you take out Alba and Busquets, who played the last 28 minutes when the crowd was already baying for blood, Suarez, who didn't play, and Messi, honestly, name a player in that Inter Miami
of course.
team.
You're there to
And
see
so
Messi.
nobody is coming for that. So that's number one. They sold the brand. Number two is the actual title of this whole event, run by the Hong Kong tourism and government, was Messi Mania.
Hey!
You call your event Messi Mania and Messi doesn't show up, you've got an issue. And there were rumors beforehand he may not play, and they organized it. The whole fact that it was organized by Tatler
Yes, weird.
probably tells you what you need to know about this event, right? Now, on the other hand, the reason I said yes and no is on your ticket, it says you're coming to watch a football match.
True.
And if a player's injured, what do you want him to do? Limp around the pitch and do whatever. But what seems to be the issue here is all about communication. And I take you back to 2017. Argentina came to Singapore to play a friendly. Messi didn't play. He actually came to Singapore and then just left, right? And it was because he had his wedding coming up and everything. But people were still excited to see Paulo Dybala. They were excited to see Angel Di Maria. It's Argentina. I'm buying ticket to see Argentina. It was communicated 4 to 5 days beforehand that Messi would not play.
That's
People were
crucial.
not stood on the pitch, right? And Argentina, knowing that this was the situation, did their effort to show up at events and do that kind of stuff. What's funny in this situation was the Hong Kong government said at halftime they still thought Messi was coming on for the second half. So that shows a bit of a lack of communication. They had a guarantee he would play 45 minutes. And then they asked for him to go up and collect the trophy. They asked for him to go and speak, and it didn't happen. They even asked for Beckham to apologize, and Beckham didn't apologize. So there seems to be a fundamental disconnect there. I personally, I understand that if you're the coach and your star player is injured, do you really want to send him out on the pitch? Of course not. But if perhaps you had gone on the pitch before the game, said, we're very sorry, have Messi speak to the crowd, have him walk around, sign a few autographs.
Exactly.
You know, everybody be very apologetic. Asian culture here, people. You might have got away with it a little bit better. I think they're going to have to end up issuing some kind of refund. The other thing is, you do this in Singapore. We're not very good at protesting. But you do this in Hong Kong. They know a thing or two about protesting.
We need a permit first. If we want to protest about Messi, we need a permit first. But you don't need a permit to let us know what you think about Lionel Messi, the transfer window, and everything else we discussed today. Send your comments to
Yahoo Southeast Asia on YouTube, Yahoo SG, Yahoo_MY on Twitter, Yahoo SEA on TikTok.
Thank you, James, as always. James will be with us in part 2 where we get stuck into Singapore football as always. So join us there and take care.